There is a version of you that still reaches for the phone at 2 in the morning, just to see if they texted back. There is a version of you that defends them to your own family, even after everything. There is a version of you that cries in the shower so no one hears it, because you are ashamed of how much you still want someone who almost ruined you. If that sounds familiar, I need you to know something before we go any further. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not stupid for still loving them. What is happening inside you right now has a name, it has a science, and it has an end point. Stay with me, because by the time this is over, you are going to understand exactly why your heart won't let go, even when your mind already has. Let's start with the hardest truth first. Love was never supposed to feel like this. Real love does not require you to shrink yourself, to walk on eggshells, to apologize for things you didn't do just to keep the peace. But somewhere along the way, the relationship you're grieving stopped being about love and started being about survival. And here is the part almost nobody tells you. Survival creates a bond that is often stronger, not weaker, than love built on safety. That is not a flaw in you. That is how the human brain is wired, and understanding that wiring is the first step to freeing yourself from it. Think about the relationship in its earliest days. There was a version of this person who made you feel like the center of the universe. They noticed things about you nobody else noticed. They said the things you had been waiting your whole life to hear. That intensity wasn't an accident. Psychologists call this idealization, and it works like a drug. Your brain, when it experiences that kind of sudden, overwhelming attention, floods itself with dopamine, the same chemical involved in addiction to substances like nicotine or cocaine. You weren't just falling in love. Neurologically, you were getting high. Then, slowly, almost invisibly, the warmth started to come with conditions. Maybe it was a comment that stung a little more than it should have. Maybe it was a silence that lasted a little too long after you said something they didn't like. And then, just when you started to brace for the coldness to become permanent, they came back. They apologized, or they didn't apologize, but they were suddenly loving again, suddenly attentive, suddenly exactly the person you fell for in the beginning. That cycle, the pulling away and the pulling back, is not random cruelty. It is one of the most powerful psychological mechanisms known to science, and it's called intermittent reinforcement. Here's what that means in plain language. If you reward a behavior every single time, the brain eventually stops paying close attention, because the outcome is predictable. But if a reward comes unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes after a long wait, the brain becomes obsessed with chasing it. This is literally the mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. You don't win every time you pull the lever. You win just often enough to keep pulling. A relationship that swings between cruelty and tenderness operates on the exact same principle. Your nervous system isn't chasing them anymore. It's chasing the next hit of relief, the next moment things go back to how they were at the beginning. Now let's talk about something even harder to hear, which is why the bad moments sometimes bond you to a person more tightly than the good ones ever could. This is what trauma researchers call trauma bonding, and it has roots in something much older than your relationship. When a living creature experiences fear, and then that fear is followed by comfort from the very source of the fear, an intense attachment forms. This isn't just theory. It's been observed in hostages who defend their captors, a phenomenon so well documented it has its own name, Stockholm Syndrome. It's been observed in children who cling harder to an unpredictable caregiver than to a stable one. Your body doesn't distinguish between danger from a stranger and danger from someone you love. It just registers fear, and then it registers relief, and it wires those two things together with the person who caused both. So when you find yourself missing someone who hurt you, what you are actually missing, in many cases, is not them specifically. It is the resolution of the fear they created in you. The hug after the fight. The apology after the silence. The relief after the panic. Your nervous system learned, through repetition, that this person is both the source of your pain and the only one who can make that exact pain go away. That is an incredibly difficult loop to break, because it convinces your body that you need them to feel safe, when in reality, they are the reason you never feel safe in the first place. There's also something happening on a cognitive level, not just an emotional one, and it's called cognitive dissonance. This is the discomfort your mind feels when it's holding two contradictory beliefs at the same time. On one hand, you know, somewhere deep down, that this person hurt you, maybe badly. On the other hand, you have years, or months, of memories, inside jokes, tender moments, maybe even a whole imagined future you built with them in your mind. Your brain does not like holding both of these truths at once, because it creates unbearable tension. So it looks for a way to resolve that tension. And very often, the easiest way to resolve it isn't to accept that you loved someone who hurt you. It's to minimize the hurt so the love makes sense again. You start telling yourself it wasn't that bad. You start remembering the good days more vividly than the bad ones. You start making excuses for them that you would never accept if a friend told you the same story about her own relationship. This is also why the people around you, the ones standing outside the relationship, can see so clearly what you struggle to see from inside it. They aren't emotionally entangled with the good memories. They aren't chemically bonded to the relief that follows the pain. They're just watching the pattern from a distance, and patterns are always easier to see from far away than from the middle of them. Let's talk about attachment styles for a moment, because this matters more than people realize. If you grew up in an environment where love felt inconsistent, where affection had to be earned, where you learned early that people you depended on could also be the ones who hurt you, your nervous system may have developed what's called an anxious attachment style. This isn't a character flaw. It's an adaptation. It was the smartest possible response to the environment you were raised in. But as an adult, that same adaptation can make chaotic, unpredictable love feel oddly familiar, even magnetic, while calm, consistent love can feel boring, or worse, suspicious, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is one of the cruelest tricks trauma plays on us. It makes safety feel unfamiliar and danger feel like home. I want to pause here and say something important, because I don't want this to sound like I'm saying it's your fault, or that you're doomed to repeat this forever. None of what I just described is a life sentence. It's a pattern, and patterns, no matter how deeply wired, can be unwired. The fact that you're listening to this right now, trying to understand what happened to you instead of just numbing it or pretending it doesn't hurt, is already proof that you are capable of change. Awareness is not the whole solution, but it is the doorway to it, and you're already standing in that doorway. Let's talk about grief for a moment, because that's really what this is. When you love someone who hurt you deeply, and then that relationship ends, you are not grieving one loss. You are grieving several losses stacked on top of each other. You're grieving the person as they actually were. You're also grieving the person you believed they could become, the version of them you saw in the good moments and thought was the real one underneath it all. And you're grieving the future you had planned around them, the wedding, the home, the ordinary Tuesday mornings that will never happen now. That is an enormous amount of loss to carry, and it makes complete sense that it doesn't just disappear because the relationship ended, or because you know, logically, that it needed to end. There's a specific kind of grief that comes with loving someone who was harmful, and it often goes unacknowledged, because the people around you might say things like, "You're better off," or "You deserve so much better," and while those things might be true, they don't erase the fact that you still miss the sound of their voice, or the specific way they used to say your name. You are allowed to miss someone and still know they were wrong for you. Those two things are not contradictions. They are both true at the same time, and making peace with that contradiction is actually part of healing, not a sign that you haven't healed yet. So how does someone actually move through this? Not around it, not by suppressing it, but through it. The first thing that has to happen is a shift from asking why did they do this to me, to asking why do I still want someone who did this to me. That second question feels much scarier to ask, because it turns the lens back on yourself, but it's also the only question that actually leads somewhere useful. The first question keeps you focused on a person who, by definition, is not going to give you the closure you're looking for. The second question puts the power back in your hands, because your own patterns, your own nervous system, your own history, those are things you can actually work with and change. Part of that work is what some therapists call grieving the fantasy, not the person. You're not just missing a human being. You're missing an idea, a story you told yourself about who they were and who you were together. And stories can be rewritten. When you catch yourself romanticizing the relationship, when you find yourself remembering only the good 3% and forgetting the other 97%, try gently reminding yourself of the full picture. Not to punish yourself, and not to hate them, but to be honest with yourself, because honesty is the only thing that can compete with the powerful pull of nostalgia. Another part of healing is rebuilding your relationship with unpredictability itself. If your nervous system has learned to associate love with chaos, then calm can genuinely feel uncomfortable for a while, almost like withdrawal. This is why some people, after leaving a painful relationship, find themselves oddly bored or unfulfilled by kind, stable people who treat them well. That boredom is not a sign that the calm person is wrong for you. It is a sign that your body is detoxing from chaos, the same way a body detoxes from any other substance it became used to. It takes time to recalibrate what safety feels like, and that discomfort is not evidence that you should go back to what hurt you. It's evidence that you're healing. It also helps enormously to rebuild a relationship with your own body during this time, because so much of what you're feeling isn't just emotional, it's physical. Trauma and heartbreak live in the nervous system, not just in your thoughts. Practices like slow breathing, movement, time outdoors, and physical touch from safe people, a hug from a friend, a hand on your shoulder, can help regulate a nervous system that has been living in fight or flight for a very long time. You don't have to think your way out of this entirely. Sometimes you have to help your body feel safe again before your mind can fully catch up. Something else worth naming, gently, is that the person who hurt you may never apologize in the way you need them to. They may never fully acknowledge what happened. And I know how much you might be waiting for that, hoping that if they just said the right words, admitted the right things, you could finally close this chapter. But closure very rarely comes from the person who hurt us. It comes from the story we build for ourselves afterward, from the meaning we choose to make out of what happened. Waiting for someone else to give you permission to heal is, in a way, giving them one more piece of power over your life. You are allowed to close the door yourself, even if they never say the words you were hoping to hear. There will be days, maybe even now, where none of this logic matters, where you just miss them, plainly and painfully, and no amount of understanding trauma bonds or dopamine or attachment theory makes that ache go away in the moment. That's okay. Understanding why something hurts doesn't make the hurt disappear instantly. It just means you're no longer confused by it. You're no longer lying awake wondering what's wrong with you. You know what's happening, you know why it's happening, and that knowledge, over time, becomes a kind of quiet strength. It won't erase the missing. But it will stop the missing from convincing you that going back is the answer. If you take one thing from everything we've talked about, let it be this. Loving someone who hurt you does not mean you were foolish. It means you're human, wired by millions of years of evolution to bond deeply with the people who are close to us, for better or worse. The same capacity that let you love that person so completely, even through the pain, is the same capacity that is going to let you love again, safely, fully, with someone who never makes you doubt whether you're worthy of gentleness. That part of you isn't broken. It was just pointed in the wrong direction for a while. And you get to redirect it, slowly, on your own time, one honest day at a time. You are not still healing because you're weak. You're healing because you survived something that asked a lot of you, and survival always leaves a mark before it leaves a lesson. Be patient with yourself. The love that stays after everything falls apart isn't proof that you should go back. It's proof of how deeply you're capable of loving, and one day, that same depth is going to be met by someone who deserves it.